The topic of the panel is ostensibly where in the stack does security belong. However, that's a very broad topic, and you can pretty well take any question and claim that it actually fits into that general topic. So I'm going to ask the first question. I'm going to ask it of the panel in general, and I'm going to ask at least 2 people to answer it, and everybody who wants to answer it will get the chance. Anybody who doesn't answer any of the questions that come up or state an opinion on anything is immediately disqualified, unless nobody wants the thing, in which case they become the prime candidate.
Well, only one of us lives in Australia.
Okay, anybody in New Zealand?
I live in Australia.
Say what?
I just asked. I didn't say anything.
Well, you don't expect him to give you a
asked
straight
either
answer.
of you.
Oh, I thought you were just asking him, so you let him answer him.
It's okay. Oh, so 2 of us are. That's good.
Okay, but that's okay. All right. So you guys, if you win, you get to decide who gets it.
Or give it to the audience.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The audience might be better.
It could be anybody in the room. Okay. The winner gets to decide who gets it,
Which might be themselves, yeah.
including themselves. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So here's the first question. Okay. If we could give you an operating system that didn't do any access control of its own, but ran at twice the speed, would applications benefit, or would they be indisposed? And I'll leave that to the panel. Okay, we have a volunteer in the room.
Do you want to answer first?
Well, I'll just start off, but I think, first of all, I'm probably the most inexperienced among this panel, so my answers might be slightly skewed. So, but in terms of what he said, I basically think that you need to look at what kind of application you're looking at. So if you're looking at something like high performance computing or something like that in a standalone environment, I would probably say performance, I would take it. But if the general use case and for normal purposes, I would say no, because I think, personally, I think the sacrifice in performance for security is almost always worth it. So does that cover the answer?
Okay, who wants to take it next?
Okay, well, I'll interpret the question as meaning that you have have to authenticate yourself to log in, but after you log in, there's no access control, so there's no user IDs or anything like that. And for a reasonable number of servers, they don't productively use access control. For example, if you have a DNS server and all it runs is your DNS process and nothing else, then that's either working or not working. And if that gets compromised, then whatever else you have for access control isn't going to do anything. Access control is really useful in the operating system when you have the option to do more than one thing. And it does exactly one thing, one process running and nothing else, then you're a bit limited to what you can do. What you can do, you can stop an application compromise from tracking logs and things, but there are various ways people have come up to deal with that. I've heard people talk about having an operating system booting from a CD-ROM or a DVD, so it can't write to its media. All it can do is run this one application that's important, and it could then send its logs to another machine off-site. So in these theoretical cases, access control won't do much good. However, these theoretical cases don't tend to happen in real life. So in real life, you actually want access control everywhere, every time. But also in terms of being double the speed, the only way in which you can really double the speed for realistic cases, it seems, is for file system. For everything else, the operating system in almost all cases uses such a small amount of resources that it's just almost impossible to measure. Only file system operations are slow enough that you can actually double the speed, really, in any likely situation, I think.
Okay.
I actually am interested in the assumptions that are being made. So we're assuming it's a server, right? Because
no.
If it's a mobile phone, that's pretty much how most of them work. Right? There's no user to log in, right? Maybe there's an authentication login, you have a little password or whatever, and yet the applications are all there and whatnot. And I assume there's some kind of thing so that my Facebook application can't see what my Twitter application is doing. But who knows what Apple's putting there? And if I'm using Facebook and Twitter anyway, right, I shouldn't assume any security. But I mean, the idea is that that's kind of how mobile phones already work. I wouldn't say necessarily double the speed. The other thing is if it's a personal computer, I mean, I don't know about you, but my father and his wife they don't lock their computer. My mother has a work computer, so it's locked. But she told everyone her passwords, or all her kids, so we could use the computer, which is ridiculous. But you know, maybe a laptop or a personal computer that would also be okay for. You know, I guess I'm kind of suspending the disbelief and saying, okay, well, you know, file systems is really where it goes, and this is a magic box, right, where if we could have that compromise. And I would say there are some applications where that would be worth it. I mean, there might be some applications where you just firewall it in. When Drizzle, which is a fork of MySQL, was first made, everybody could just authenticate to it. And everyone's like, just authenticate to the database, and there's no authentication. It's just the plugin for authentication wasn't written yet. And they were like, look, 99% of the time, you just have the application doing its thing, and that's it. You have one application against this database, and that's it. So who cares if, like, you know, your blog can authenticate? You just say, okay, it can only come from this machine, and they would have to hack into that machine first. Not that they couldn't do it, they would just have to hack. There's another level of hacking they have to do first. So I would say, you know, it would depend on the functionality. You know, going with the first point made, that I would take it in some circumstances, and in fact, I already have with my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to agree with the point you made. An OS environment like that with no controls would be practical only for a purposeful application. And I've heard of some research around this. In fact, a university colleague of mine had a project called Bear, where his premise was that he would write applications that would run directly on top of BIOS. Or potentially UEFI firmware based, and in that case, all your controls as far as authentication or ACLs would be within the application itself. And you know, again, if it's a purposeful thing, like all it's going to be is a DNS server, as you pointed out, you know, it certainly is a premise that could work, and perhaps even be more secure than a multi-user, multi-purpose operating system.
I'd like to comment about the mobile phone example. For Android phones, they do have a good permission model for the applications, but almost every application gets permission to write to your SD card or whatever, because they always want to store things on there. And that means every photo you take can be accessed by almost every Android application, and most of them have access to the internet as well. So when they can access all your private data and send it all to the internet, sure, they might be protected from each other, but it doesn't matter so much, I think. So, I mean, in theory, you weren't quite right, but in practice you are, because they get enough access to share that it doesn't really matter, they can all mess with you anyway. And so phones that don't really protect you.
Okay, so I would like to offer the audience the opportunity to join in here. So if you would like to ask a question, either throw your hand up or stand up. And so when they're done, we'll get you to next. So you look like you were waving your arm. So arm wavers get called on. It's a really good
so first of all, my first personal computer had absolutely no security, and it really would have liked to go a little bit faster. It was a 4 megahertz, not gigahertz thing running CP/M, and it worked. That said, any application, you only ran one application at once. But a much more modern thing over television, I don't think they've got any security in the tiny Linux kernel that a modern TV runs, and they run quite well. So the issue is whether you have different things that compete for resources or information. But as long as you're isolating them by having different appliances and things like that, I don't think it's a problem, and getting speed in some of those would be really valuable.
Okay, so what's the question?
Do they agree?
So the problem is when your blender can talk to your TV. The day when your blender can talk to you, or I guess these days your fridge could talk to your TV. The TV commercials could go straight to your fridge and say, go order this product.
Okay, so I think the panel has just provided the next question to the panel here. Okay, what is the appropriate security paradigm for your toaster?
Is it a pop-up toaster or is it a toaster oven?
It's a pop-up.
Convection or conventional?
It's conventional. Okay, so anybody want to field that one? I'll call on somebody if nobody fields it.
You can decide to think about it.
I'll say there would have to be some kind of age access authentication. I think anyone who can go in my house can make toast or make a pizza in the toaster oven, but I would want them to be over a certain age. I don't want a 3-year-old using the toaster. Now, granted, we already have that by putting it on a counter, right? So you have to be able to reach the counter to do that. So
Right,
that might be
security, you want security in depth, though.
Sure, sure. You know, and certainly, like in Australia, I can't tell you how many times I've plugged something in and not actually pushed the button on the
Yeah.
on the power thing. So there's security there for, you know.
Okay. What if it's a network-enabled toaster?
But if I'm drunk at 3 in the morning, I want to be able to make my waffles. You know, like it can't be too security enabled.
Well, I think for a toaster, you need to have multiple sources of inputs. You have like the push the button on method. There's also the form of like you're lying in bed. I'll get up in a few minutes, so I'll use my phone to tell my toaster to grab a slice of bread and put it in the toast. And when it's done, then I'll get out of bed to eat it. And
Right.
so for that sort of use, I mean, you want to have you authenticate your phone. Maybe have a application on the phone that authenticates itself via SSL, and to make sure that you don't have hostile people just toasting your bread when you're not at home.
Well, more importantly, setting your house on fire.
Right. I would turn the networking off because I wouldn't use that feature. That's my answer to that solution. You don't have to buy the product just because it exists.
You're not. Well, I thought you said you were an American.
I'm also an American with no credit card debt.
Yeah, she's the other one. All right. So let's see if we can have a
There's a
question.
hand up there.
No, right up there. Oh, hang on. Wait for the mic. Come on. You got run. The guy this morning ran. Come on.
Yeah.
Actually,
it
the
could
coffee
be
maker would
stopped.
be you want the coffee, that would be a better example.
Thank you very
Coffee
much.
maker.
So going back to the fridge question then, is it worth or practical to try and enforce a minimum set of security rules for a fridge, and could it be enforced? How could you go about doing it? Would it be worth it?
You mean like don't let the teenagers ransack the fridge after between like 1 a.m. and 7 a.m.?
No, well, considering that if you can hook a fridge up to the net, then it's effectively because they can order food for you, then it is a target of an attack because it's on your local network, and if a PC is compromised, you can scan and look for fridges that have a certain vulnerability. So yeah, security in home appliances. Could it be implemented, and I suppose should it, and how could you go about doing it?
Well, actually, I'm going to take this one because this is a fun question. Imagine, if you will, your Arnos, and you decide your corporate revenues are down a little bit. You have immediately become one of those entities that sees real value in hacking your refrigerator, so that it will order extra Tim Tams. So.
Yeah, but nobody's going to notice if they get more Tim Tams.
Okay.
Right.
So we've got one up here. That's what you get for running all the way down here.
It's like tennis, you got to stick in the middle.
That's right.
More just a topic
Oh,
of discussion.
Oh, no, go ahead. He's got it now. You can. Sorry. Just keep your arm up in the air, and then we'll get to you eventually.
Just a topic of discussion, more cloud-based and security being introduced there in terms of auditing authentication, two-factor authentication. Just thoughts and theories on where it's going, where it should be going.
I actually liked the Google chip that's coming out. So it's still one-factor authentication. I mean, it might be two-factor because it's your password in the chip, but it's something physical. So I think the problem with any kind of authentication system is if it can be done entirely remotely, there is a world of hackers out there that could eventually get your things. So one-factor authentication is right, probably not enough. Two-factor, it's two remote pieces of data that you could probably look. If you want to know what my first pet's name is, it's probably on Facebook somewhere if I've had Facebook since I was younger. You want to know what's the best man at my wedding, go look at my wedding photos on Facebook, right? Go look at Twitter, right? What's my, what's the street I used to live on? Like there are totally things that you can find just that people are putting out there that they then use as and also as their I forgot my password question. What year did you graduate high school? Well, that's on my timeline. So I think that it's obvious that the authentications we have aren't good enough. And I like the idea of having something physical because then somebody has to steal it from me. And that's a lot smaller population than the entire world of hackers. It might be a couple thousand people that I interact with daily. I could lose my chip or whatever, but then somebody would have to know who it was associated with. It's like losing your house key. If you write your house key is great authentication. It's one factor of physical authentication, right? So if we hand that for other things, right, then if you lose your house key, unless you wrote your address on your house key, you're probably okay. I mean, you still want to change your locks maybe, but maybe you don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it'd be good to, well, when people write clients for their services, they should be thinking about these things. I mean, for example, some people have written a Android client for WordPress. They've also got an iPhone client, which is presumably the same, but I haven't tried it. So the Android client for WordPress, you enter your blog URL, your username and password, and logs you in, and you do stuff. But what they should be doing, I think it's much the same people writing the client and the server. So they should be having some sort of a one-time password type thing with code on the client, generating this code, so you know that it's only the same Android phone that's being used. So when you log into your administrative account on WordPress, you set up the magic number or whatever, and then only that particular Android phone can be used with the username and password to log in to WordPress on your blog. This wouldn't be that hard for them to do, but they haven't done it. And this is very hard for other people to do. So for example, on my blog, I've got a YubiKey, which is the same technology I believe Google's now using for their one-time, for their hardware token thing. And so I use that for my PC-based logins to my blog. But for my phone, I've got less security because the phone client doesn't support it. And it'd been a fairly easy thing for them to do in software, but they haven't done it, unfortunately. So I think what we need is to have more awareness by developers about these things.
So I have a question how that works. How does it work with the WordPress to your phone? It's only allowed, that's the only mobile device that's allowed is your phone?
But this is, actually I can answer that, because Google, the two-factor authentication that Google has for the accounts right now, basis on one is you can manage your applications with the one-time password that's generated.
Right.
So essentially, if you configure your Evolution client to have a IMAP address with the password, you get one long, I don't know how long it is, quite long character password that you can put it in. Yeah. And you don't need a physical key for that. So every time that's there, it identifies that this is coming from this application. And in case it's compromised, you can just disable the application and you don't have to worry about it at all.
Right, no, I was just wondering about the mobile phone thing you were talking about. Is that similar to the Google two-factor authentication? Because it sounded like you were saying you set up your mobile phone and then that's the only mobile device
I'm doing two
that
things, using my PC and using my phone. So for logging in with my PC, I use this device. And this, you probably see even from the back, this is a little USB device, and you plug it into a PC, and it's a keyboard. And you push the button on it, and it acts like a keyboard typing a password in, and it's a one-time password. And so this means that if I log in with this over the internet to any of a number of services, then someone can't log in twice with the same password. So I log in, they sniff the traffic, they can't log in themselves with their password. On my phone, though, I like to have similar functionality, and Google has a authentication app for Google services that runs on an Android phone. And you run this app and it gives you a password that you can then type into a PC or any sort of web browsing device to log into Gmail or any other Google service, I believe. And so this code that's generated on this Google phone app is in concept the same as the code that's generated by this. But this just comes from a hardware token that's like a keyboard, and whereas the other option is on the phone. And they both work fairly well, because with the Android phone permissions model, this data is stored separately from the other data. So I believe that, well, unless Google has made a mistake in their coding, which is always possible, but not that likely, I think, this data is secure from the other apps on the phone. So unless someone cracks root on my phone or steals my phone and disassembles it, my Gmail account password that's stored in this app is safe. And this, again, is also fairly safe. Even if someone steals this, they would have a lot of trouble in taking the key apart. It's easy for a national lab, but for an individual, it's not possible. So you'll have to actually own this device and insert in something to log into my account. But with the WordPress app on my phone, none of that's needed. All it is username and password. You sniff the traffic, you get the username and password, and you're in from anywhere. And this can be done so much better.
Okay, the guy in the blue shirt up there. He's been very patient. We should applaud him.
Hope that should be done better.
Back to the Internet of Things. I wanted two questions. One is about your fridge. There's also the matter of privacy, what you keep in your fridge. Lots of people would want to know that. The second question, your self-driving car, what kind of security would you want on your self-driving car?
Okay, we're going to start at this end.
Well, regarding the fridge, I'll start with that. Yeah, I guess I recall, when IP version 6 hit the scene, the idea was, oh, well, we'll have enough IPs that everything in your life could have an IP address, including your refrigerator. I still can't see the use case for that, but nevertheless, yeah, I think that there's solutions out there that you could put into something like that, and I'll go back to something I talked about with the TPM. It's a $1 commodity chip that you could stick in that could store securely store some sort of cryptographic key that could use to authenticate your refrigerator to, and you could also use it to help combat some privacy concerns by having a place to store key material for a secure connection, that kind of thing. And something like that could be applicable to a car too. But my self-driving car, I think I would want to control the network access when it's only parked in my garage, if it needs to do some updates to the maps or something like that, and then it's totally offline after that. Or air-gapped components, and this is kind of common, like in systems like airplanes and things like that. You either have, systems that are air-gapped, or you either have them on like a very secure hypervisor, like a Green Trees, oh, I can't figure the name of it. It's Green something hypervisor that they specialize in these mission critical applications with mathematically proven security. So that's the only thing I guess I would trust in a self-driving car.
I mean, I guess with both the fridge and the car, I don't necessarily want, do I want my insurance company knowing that sometimes I drive, 100 kilometers, about 140 kilometers an hour on the highway when it's, 100 kilometers is the limit? Probably not. Do I want, do I want the foods chain? Do I want Woolies to know that I buy, 2 heads of lettuce per day, per week, and half of one goes rotted? Not really. I mean, there are people that don't use the customer loyalty cards because they don't want people knowing what they buy. And I think that, with the fridge, it's somewhat similar, for me anyways, that, I wouldn't necessarily want to know that. Now, I might want to know if I'm at the supermarket and I think, do I have any milk? I would probably want to know, but, it's not going to improve my life that much to know if I have milk. Now, that being said, there might be things that would improve my life. For example, the automated food delivery, that kind of thing. But, I'm also, in a place where sometimes I'll ask my husband, what I should get from the supermarket, and he goes, well, I don't know what I'm going to want for dinner next week. I don't know what you should buy. And I'm like, well, I'm going to buy it. So it's a difficult thing. I think it's important to have the privacy and security, and I think it's also important for us to understand the consequences of our own actions, right? So if I say, hey, yeah, sure, I could let the supermarket know when I'm out of something. I want them to know. But now the other thing is, how do you know when you're out of something? Does it reside on a certain shelf? Does it do certain things? I mean, can I actually get some kind of newfangled dishwasher that can tell me exactly what the optimal place to put the cup is, or the bowl? Do you put the bowl on the top or the bottom? If I could just have that, right, that would be good. So, but coming back to the fridge in the car, I mean, these are things where we have to think of, do we want these features? Do we want them on? Do we have a choice? I mean, navigation would be great, as standard in every car, and that gets some satellite stuff, but that's mostly, a one-way kind of, I'm sending you. It's a pull mechanism, right? I'm pulling data from the satellite. Hopefully the satellite can't come and pull data from my car. The satellite has its own logs, and that does its own thing. But do we really want that data to be out there? Do we really want the next version of CSI to be like, and this was what was in their fridge 3 hours ago before they cleaned it out? And how do you catalog a human head in the fridge anyway?
By the barcode.
By the what?
The barcode.
The barcode. That's right. So I mean, I think that's a really good question, and I don't have an answer to it because I think it depends on what different people want. You don't want your family to run out of food. Do you use auto pay? And if so, on what services? I use auto pay on certain things that are fixed payments, and that give me incentives to do so. I don't use them on my phone because I don't want my phone company to be like, oh yeah, I know you're in Australia and that was like $5,000 worth of calls you made. I want to be able to fight that, right? The phone can be variable every month. So I think similarly, I wouldn't necessarily want to order more milk just because I'm out of milk. Maybe I'm going away on vacation soon and I want to use up all the milk and I don't want any more. So I think that it really depends on the use case, and I hate to say it depends, but I think it does. You have to be careful about physical security too, right? Because with a chip or whatever, that's great, but if your kid can get a hold of it, right, and they can all of a sudden read all your email or all your private files, maybe you don't want them to know, where your porn collection is or what investments you have. Either way.
Okay, that end of the table.
I'll say. Well, I mean, like Asheri said, essentially, it comes down to what you value the most for yourself. So what you think is private for you, what do you think that you don't want to share with anybody else. So that being said, me personally, in terms of first going to the fridge, I would probably have a system where I need to authorize a purchase or a weekly schedule or something like that, and I'm okay with that. If on every Saturday I get a ping from my fridge on my phone saying, all right, you are out of these things, shall I go ahead and authorize the payment? Yeah, sure, I can do that. So that way I keep, I have a certain control over it as well. So it's kind of meeting things halfway. It's not fully automated, but I don't want it to be fully automated. I don't mind being bugged once every week to remind me that I need to buy grocery. That's fine, I'm happy with that. And the same thing with the car as well. As long as I authorize something, even if a self-drive car, do I want it to come to me when I'm stuck in the rain somewhere? Do I want the car to come to me? How do I authorize it remotely? So sometimes in those cases, I would want it to come to me. And in that case, something like a two-factor authentication or something like that, that'll allow me to do it securely. I'm happy with that. And I don't really care if people track where I go in that car. If I don't want somebody to track me, what I'm doing at that particular point, I'll probably not take that car. So it comes to the same thing. It depends on what you want to do and what you value is private to yourself.
Okay, so firstly, for a car, I think a lot of things people will be concerned about for a car are things that already are concerns for Android phones and iPhones. So if you have an Android phone or iPhone, then either Google or Apple is tracking you wherever you go. They know a lot of information about you. They know everything you do on the phone. In theory, at least, they won't actually read your email unless you're going through, say, the Gmail service. When I say read, I don't mean actually person read. I mean like, store on their servers and statistical analysis or something. I'm not suggesting anything unethical. But in theory, I mean, a company that produces your phone or writes the operating system for it could do a lot of things that you wouldn't want, and you've got to trust them a lot in that regard. And so for the car, I think it's a similar sort of thing. I mean, a car, of course, the people who run the overall service that manages that will know everywhere you go and be able to work out what you do there. So there's a lot of things they'll, in theory, at least know about you, and you've got to hope that they're not going to be evil about it. So I think a lot of things are basically the same for phones and cars. The difference is, of course, a phone can't make you hit a brick wall 100 kilometres an hour, whereas a car, in theory at least, can. So you want to be very careful about what happens with the code that determines where the car is going. Its radar might stop it from driving directly into a brick wall. It might have hardware to do that. But stopping a car from going the wrong way on a freeway, that's a much harder software problem to deal with, and not something that can be solved with hardware. So I think there's a lot of care would need to be taken to isolate the controls that make the car go in different directions from the controls that allow you to do things like read your email in the car and give it high-level commands. I mean, the code that actually says I want to go to drive to Canberra, I mean, that's something that, if it gets spoofed, then it's not so bad. I mean, we've seen the news about the woman who wanted to drive to the station and ended up in a few countries away. It's a bit of an amusing anecdote, and I don't think the woman suffered from this experience. But if your car goes the wrong way on a freeway, that's something you're going to suffer from. So I think the main issue is to just have perhaps very small surface area for attack on the actual code that runs the car and controls the maps for which way you go on roads, etc., to make sure it doesn't go the wrong way on a freeway. And for most other things that could go wrong, it's no worse than your phone already is, and everyone seems to already have dealt with that. Can we have a show of hands in the audience? Who has a iPhone or Android phone in their pocket right now? Okay, do the other way. Raise your hand if you don't have such a smartphone in your pocket.
Similar.
Okay, there's like 4 or 5 people in the audience, 6 people. So the rest of us, we're already being, in theory at least, tracked everywhere for whatever we do by one of the phone manufacturers. So we've already made our decisions about some of these issues about privacy and who we're going to trust. I've decided to trust Google with everything I do in that regard, and some of you would have decided to trust Apple, and we've made decisions in this regard already.
Okay, so we had a question here, I believe. No? Okay, you got it. Okay. Over there. It's got to be a question.
So we've touched on the issue of user authentication for devices a bit today with the toasters, cars, fridges. What kind of security procedures do you think we can use to ensure that this concept can be used in a world where more and more the internet's consuming everything in a way that you can't really have a physical connection to something to authenticate it that you actually wanted to do something? Anyway.
Well, I think we already had that with online shopping and credit cards. You don't have to have the physical card to swipe. You just have to have that. And I know you're talking about more concrete things. Remote access to things, or you have servers now that you never have to actually rack yourself, right? You go on Amazon AWS, you never have to touch it. But I think it all comes down to certain things, and credit cards don't even have two-factor authentication unless you count the code on the back as a second factor, but I wouldn't. It's still one card. So it's a difficult problem, and I mean credit cards, which are the biggest, right? We use them all the time, and we want to use them, and how do we prevent me from using them and you from not using my card and me from not using his card? And banks have very interesting policies about this, and I found out some very, very interesting things about both debit and credit cards, about certain credit limits and how they go hand in hand with debit limits. For example, if your credit card number is stolen, at least in the US, there is no way that you can have a $0 credit limit on your credit card but not on your debit card. So you would think, look, I can go to an ATM, I can put the card in, I should be able to get cash out even though the number was stolen, the credit card number. The ATM should still work, I still have my PIN, whatever. It doesn't work because if it's 0 on one, it has to be 0 on another. There are certain limits, and there's only about 14 different limits, pairs of limits, and that's one of them. So I think that the banking industry is doing that, and we are starting to have things like chip and PIN, which is sort of two-factor authentication, I guess. It's still one of those, if someone has a gun to your head or something, they can still get it. So I think you're absolutely right that we need to start thinking about that and thinking about the trade-offs we make, right? We like the convenience of online credit cards, right? Online shopping with credit cards. Maybe your trade-off is you don't do it with your debit card, but you'll do it with your credit card because there are safeties in place. And I think we'll start to see regulations too. Banking didn't always used to have regulations in place that said if somebody drains your bank account, you'll get the money back tomorrow or in a week. It used to be 6 to 8 weeks or months of paperwork. So I think that we will start to see, I'm not saying trust the companies that are doing it, but I think that there will be enough problems that there will be legislation around this that companies have to safeguard certain things, and there has to be certain privacy. Like companies can know that that the fridge is empty or full, and how much peanut butter we go through, even though you don't really store that in the fridge. And maybe they can sell that data to others, but they can't, there's certain things they can't, like how many times you open the fridge, I don't know. There would be some kind of regulation on those.
Anyone else?
Okay, so I think that one thing that's missing in a lot of systems is hardware controls. So for example, this is my phone, and it's got a nice camera here, and it's got a camera on the other side, so if I want to do a video conference call, I can just talk to my phone. These are nice features. Now, I put my phone down. I put it down this way, and the big camera is facing up. I put it down the other way, and the little camera is facing up. No matter what I do, if my phone is not in my pocket, the camera is pointing at something that's possibly useful to an attacker. This phone is always on the internet. This phone is one model that had a security flaw in it, and I'm not sure if it's been patched to fix that flaw. So if I installed the wrong application from the Android market, in theory at least, my phone could be owned by someone who could then be taking pictures of us right now. So when I hold this phone up to make a point to the audience, someone could take a picture of you and send it across the internet without you knowing about it. What I'd like to see is a shutter on the phone. So I can just flick a bit of hardware across, and the camera is closed, and then even if someone else was doing something hostile with this phone, it couldn't take a picture because there's a bit of metal or something across it. And also for the microphone, there's no hardware for the microphone. Well, you've got that on your phone. That's nice.
It's not my phone.
Okay, my phone does have that. And the microphone as well. There's no way of shutting the microphone down. So software can enable this microphone at any time. Can you listen to us right now? This conversation is not secret. Other conversations are. My phone's in my pocket. Who knows what's happening? So it'd be ideal if we had a way of just shutting this off, like click a little switch on the side to turn off the microphone. And it would add maybe $1 to the price of the phone. I'd pay $1 extra for a phone that had that. Who would pay extra for a phone that had harbor controls to turn off these things?
Well, it's not just
Not
phones,
everyone,
but
it seems, unfortunately.
For cars too. I mean, like that would be more important for things like cars, right? You have so you're talking about physical blocks.
Yeah.
You know, so like the car, they have the club or whatever that you
club.
put across the thing, and it's not 100% effective. You can cut out the steering wheel, right? But they're going to pass over your car if they see that. So I think that's a good point. That maybe they can engage the car, they can turn on the car remotely, but it won't be able to steer. Because the wheels can't turn because it's attached to the steering.
It's different
And how's the
things.
software going to detect that?
Yeah.
That's scary in itself.
Can I just ask a question? Who here has used an Android phone or iPhone when they are in the bathroom or getting changed or in other ways not wearing the normal amount of clothes? Can I have a show of hands who's willing to put their hand up for that?
Yeah, but if you do that though,
Yeah.
the phone is on the ground and looking up. Right?
No, it's
So
like
they're not seeing you.
you're getting dressed and you get an email and you go, okay, I'll read my email now. The phone can be seeing
But
you.
it's looking at my face. I don't say, let me look at my email now.
You haven't read his email.
Let's not go there. But anyway,
Hey, good point.
when you've got a camera on each side, I mean, having neither of those cameras point towards any part of you don't want seen by random people on the internet, it's a bit of a challenge if you're going to be reading email and stuff. And you don't really think about it. You want to just have, a bit of metal or plastic going across the thing and say, okay, the shutter's closed. Even if something goes wrong, they can't see me.
Okay.
The accelerometer hack. The accelerometer in the iPhone 4 was so sensitive you could have it on a table and essentially tell what a person was typing.
Good point.
You
Yep.
know, the vibration going through the table.
Yeah.
Do you want features or security?
Security, actually, that's just
Oh, well-
a big question like that.
Okay.
You could have a switch on the side, a hardware switch that locks down all those sensors, and just say, okay, I own my phone sensing nothing. I just go click. Microphone's off. No, no, you don't.
You can't take the battery out of an iPhone. Well, okay, you can, but
Okay, we've got time for one more question here. Now, you declined. Okay, okay, and this better be a question.
So a really fundamental question, can you actually make software secure enough? Right? And we're talking about complex applications, not a hello world program.
If it's secure enough, it means that this is the value of my data, and I want to secure it to that value and not much more. Then, in many cases, yes. If it's a case of I want this software to stay in the field running for 10 years non-stop and with internet access and have no one crack it, then no, probably.
Go ahead.
That's a tough. I don't believe so. I think that all software will always have flaws. I think that essentially, it's about managing risk and what risk you're willing to take. Like with the phone and your camera that you're speaking of, it's just something that we accept. And there's certainly no coincidence to the fact if you ever work in a secure space, government space, that first thing you have to leave the phone in the car because that these things are very easily compromised. And as more complex systems get, the harder it's going to be to find these flaws and deal with them. And I believe that there's certain things that we could do to really help mitigate risk, and we're not doing them. And that's something that I like to see. Cryptographically verified code modules would go a good long way. And certainly Apple has tried to do it, and it's always seems somebody figures out a way to break it. Digital signatures, the hardware root of trust thing that I've mentioned several times. I mean, it's a good starting point to try to, at least know that what is running on there is what you think it should be. Now, nonetheless, that code could be flawed, but at least it's that particular version, and it's in that state. So there's some things out there that can go a long way. And then, with the trend of outsourcing to cloud, it's a plus and minus. So, there could be your applications could very well be more secure in the cloud if you're dealing with a provider that really knows what they're doing. If you're providing baseline operating systems that have controls turned on that maybe you wouldn't in your inside organization because your administrator doesn't know what he's doing. So, there's some trends to help mitigate risk, but defect-free software is highly unlikely.
Okay, I think I'm going to call an end here. So, as an audience, were the best answers from this side of the table or this side of the table? Okay, let's have hands for this side of the table. Okay, let's have hands for this side of the table. Okay, by acclamation, it's this side of the table. All right, so now, was it the center of the table or the end of the table? Center of the table. End of the table. Okay, we have our winner. Now, who gets it?
If you asked a question and you want this, raise your hand.
What is it?
This is well, you don't get it because you obviously weren't here this morning to know that Casey had won the Smart Monitor. It's a real-time home electricity monitor that works in Australia and New Zealand. So if you want it, so I saw the man in blue back there and you here, and oh, this is a tough one, huh?
You want a coin?
Okay, let's have them both come down. Both come down here.
We'll get the sumo wrestling suits out and.
Okay, no, let's get them both to come down here. Yeah, so you get to ultimately decide here, but we have to. We'll present your contestants here.
I'm okay with letting the audience vote too. By the way.
Okay,
so needs to.
Well, you come over here. Okay, stand there together. Okay.
Oh yeah, wait. Does anyone have access to the internet?
Well, everyone does.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't get a route out. So do Google fight on their first names, unless they both.
No, both their names.
No.
Why?
Okay.
Yeah, or
Lizard Spock. No, someone Google. What are your first names? What's Stephen with a PH. Stephen with a PH. Josh. Okay, someone Google fight that. Stephen versus Josh. Anyone? Bueller?
I think Josh is going to win. Yeah.
There's a wrestling. Josh versus Stephen.
With a PH. Stephen with a PH.
Got that.
Google fight.
who's the victor?
Yeah, it's a site called Google Fight. Has a number of results.
470 billion.
How many Joshes?
He's working on it. He's doing
I'm just doing it manually.
He's doing it on his own.
280 billion for Josh.
So Stephen won.
Stephen with PH is the...
There you go.
Surprising. I thought Josh was going to win that.
Okay.
Well, Joshua might have more.
Okay. Well, we'll thank the panel here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for
Now wait,
coming.